Well, hello. How are you guys doing today? Hopefully you're having a marvelous, fantastic, lovely morning. You know what? It's raining, which means I'm inside, which is good. It's good for me. I just finished a show. Man, I haven't done an interview in a little while because life's been tumultuous, but I just did a show with like a TV network. Go figure. Totally different. You know what I mean? But you know what blew me away? People are seriously learning about stuff out there. You know what I'm saying? This was like a Christian TV show. And but they were like super dialed in to understanding some of the things that are taking place in the world and in the kingdom of darkness. And I was blown away. I was fired up. It started sharing with me a lot of the perspective of how many people are actually waking up to understand a lot of how the enemy, our adversary, truly operates and how he is so efficient at really destroying people's lives. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just all pumped up after it. So instead of just like wandering around my house, just sweating profusely and just being fired up alone, I'm going to take you on a journey of what happens when I'm all kind of fired up with all kind of piss and vinegar. You know what I'm saying? I'm dripping sweat out of my armpits on a profuse level, which means let's go, son. It's time for warfare. But check this out. I've been doing a little bit of a study here because like I said, we're doing the War of the Ages. I have a playlist here, if you guys aren't aware of it. There's a little playlist with all kinds of treasures in there, and they're just random little pearls that I throw out as I go along in my life. But this is the War of the Ages. We went through part one a little bit ago. We talked about Gregory Reed's book, The War of the Ages. But instead of just doing audiobooks for every single book that I really like, because people throw rocks at me about copyright laws, dadgummit. Seriously, I try to do some stuff, you guys, behind the scenes that I've spent sometimes weeks or months working on in projects, and I post it and it gets deleted or gets taken down or gets struck down with copyright laws and all kinds of other stuff. Because some people aren't just generous to share kingdom work. And that royally ticks me off. You know what I'm saying? To me, if you're on the kingdom front, you know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about business stuff. I understand. You guys out there, I understand. You're laboring in the kingdom, like for the souls of men. Make your stuff available for people. You know what I'm saying? We'll all spread it. Like I'll give credentialed like shout outs to people and I'll put plugs for everybody's book or website or whatever. But it's a bummer when people like in the body are like not about you sharing their stuff unless you give them some kind of like royalty. You want to channel them back through your website. I'm like, dude, I'll do a really good audiobook for you. I'll do a really fine audio reading for you, for free. I just want to get the material out there. It's like my passionate pursuit is to just make content available for people, period. Because, it says like, buy the truth and do not sell it. Like I read that pretty carefully. Like I'm serious. That's a serious warning about like what we're supposed to do with the truth when we have it. Like give it to people, give it away to people. Anyways, but instead of just trying to do chronologically all of the audiobooks for all of the books that I really like and keep throwing all of my time away, I'm going to just try to do some excerpt readings from some that are like my absolute favorite, like Expelling Darkness, the other one we've been hitting on, Russ Disdar's book. Those aren't readily available. Even like the Gospel to Every Creature, like not available. That one I'm going to work on trying to do an audio for you guys just because it doesn't exist anywhere else. This one though, the Shinar Directives sequel, The Sharith Imperative by Dr. Michael Lake. Salty book, you know what I'm saying? It's so good because he's dealing with the kingdom warfare. By far, you guys, if I was real transparent with you about like any ministers out there, like I like listen to, like actually really regard what they have to say with a serious way because the fruits of their life are like in order. Kingdom Intelligence Briefing, Dr. Michael Lake and Mary Lou, they're up there like it. I only have a handful of others. I do like Torah Life Ministries for those guys that aren't familiar with him. He's all pro modesty. My man. What's up? Those of you that don't know about it, modest is the hottest. Check it out. Kill vanity. Murder it. A Nazarite vow will do that right quick. You know what I'm saying? Hair coming out everywhere. But I digress. Anyways, there's a section in here. He's dealing a lot with the kingdom warfare because fundamentally he did not come to preach the kingdom of salvation, right? Yeshua, our Messiah. He didn't come to destroy the works of the devil by teaching them about the kingdom of salvation. He came to preach to them about the kingdom of Yahuwah, like the kingdom of righteousness. Not just like, we're not just supposed to go out there and try to recruit people to be saved, the end. You know what I'm saying? That's like the door that we're supposed to walk through at the very infinitesimal beginning point of our relationship with him. That's just the very beginning place. From there, it's all about what's called sanctification, transformation, like regeneration of your mind, putting off the old works, like putting to death. Check this out in 1 Peter. Gosh, it's so good. Anyways, this journey is just launching me in all kinds of crazy directions because I'm sharpening the other edge of my sword ferociously right now. I don't have access to my sword because my child is sleeping on it. It's sheathed. Take it easy. It's good. I love having a sword near me at all times. I think on this wall behind me, I just want to hang swords and knives like crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's just very blank. And it's just teasing me to be like, let's just put knives all over it. Let's just put knives all over it. But then people get uncomfortable when I talk about killing people with knives. You know what I'm saying? That's past stuff, you guys. Knives are fundamentally the greatest tools ever, but I'm almost always a single-edged guy. I had some double-edged daggers and stuff for pocket knives. They're just very unpractical. They're only useful for basically one thing, which is piercing. But this one, on the other hand, like this is a Benchmade, I don't know, their bug out model. It's fantastic. Highly recommend it. My favorites. I used to be a Spyderco man, but now I've gone down the Benchmade journey. I'll just say it. They're better. This one, Benchmade 940 Osborne, the best pocket knife I've ever had in my life. What a gift. The greatest gifts. Anyways, when you're sharpening up your edges, these are all single-edged tools, but a double edge, you got to sharpen both sides, and it's very likely you're going to cut your face off doing the other side. So be careful how you walk. Anyways, I'm sharpening up the other edge of my sword in the New Testament like crazy lately, and I got into this. Check this out here. He's hitting on a point here, very fundamentally critical. Peter, Kepha, the rock. Amazing. Check this out. Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind. That's a good one. Being sober. That's an even better one. That's why I took the Nazirite vow, for those of you that don't know. Numbers chapter 6 tells you if any of you want to be set apart to Yahuwah, like to be more set apart to him, man or woman, you abstain from cutting your hair, drinking alcohol, strong drink, beverages, mind-altering substances, basically. I had to take a vow to get sober, stay sober. Know what I'm saying? Been a big, long journey, addictions and prolific insanity of my life. But it's been highly effective in shocking and powerful ways. And it's also abstinence from the kingdom of death, which is fantastic. You don't go to funerals. You don't go hang around dead bodies. You don't go walk on top of graves. You know what I'm saying? Like all that kind of stuff. You abstain from defiling yourself. It makes you really think about stuff like what's in your food on a regular basis. Like for those of you that are polluting your bodies by eating blood, you know what I'm saying? I had a great email from somebody that just sent me a message asking about ancestral supplements, ancestral supplies. They make all kinds of meaty substances for supplementation, like beef thymus. Fantastic for those of you who are trying to boost your immune system. Beef thymus, beef liver, that kind of stuff. But one of the products had beef blood in it. And she was looking into it and was like, what? I'm like, dang, don't eat the life. Don't eat the blood over and over and over and over and over. Old Testament to New Testament. They're like, don't mess around. Don't eat the blood. One of those things you got to guard yourself from. For those of you that are taking pharmaceuticals, please be cautious because a lot of them contain human blood, animal blood, in prolific amounts, like shocking quantities of it. A lot of them are derived from that. Anyways, Chelsea's going down a deep dive rabbit hole right now about health and healing. And she went to the Food and Drug Association. Yeah, FDA's website about food additives and stuff like that. And all the byproducts of animal production, like the slaughtering of the offal and what goes into that and what they use those organs for. All this stuff that offal is like the organs, the stuff that people generally don't want to eat, like the menudo. I come from this territories of the Spaniards in Arizona, and they make this dish called menudo, which is from the intestines or stomach of an animal. It's quite delicious if it cooked well. You know what I'm saying? But most people are like, I don't want anything to do with that. So they sell it to all these other companies that derive pharmaceutical products from it, like animal blood, pig feet, the thymus glands, all of these like pituitary glands, adrenals, all that stuff. Adrenal products, adrenochrome, that kind of stuff comes from animals and goes into your pharmaceuticals and goes into your body. Also comes from humans. From the blood donations bank, 80% of the blood that's donated gets put back into pharmaceuticals that people eat. So something to consider. Anyways, being sober has all kinds of different variations and categories for your mind and why you're supposed to guard this temple, tabernacle of your body. It's critical because the enemy is trying to set himself up in there. Anyways, being sober, set your expectation perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. Instead, as the one who called you is set apart, so you also should become set apart in all behavior, because it has been written, be set apart, for I am set apart. And if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear, knowing that you were redeemed from your futile behavior, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, as of a lamb unblemished and spotless, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, who through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in Elohim. Now that you have cleansed your lives in obeying the truth through the Spirit to unfeigned brotherly love, love one another fervently with a clean heart, having been born again, not of corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the living word of Elohim, which remains forever. Because all flesh is as grass, and all the esteem of man as the flower of grass. The grass withers and its flower falls away, but the word of Elohim remains forever. And this is the word that was announced to you. Having put aside then all evil and all deceit and hypocrisies, envyings and all evil words, as newborn babes, desiring the unadulterated milk of the word, in order that you grow by it. It is indeed, if indeed you have tasted that the master is good. Man, do I know about unadulterated milk, like babies that want milk. I have milk fed my babies now more than ever. I've got twin babies. Hardest 9 months of my life. Hardest year of my adult life. Oh my gosh. Raising twin babies has been insane. Crazy. Sorry if my camera's going in and out of focus all the time. There's literally nothing I can do about it. It's been absolutely ridiculous. Lots of craziness. Maybe I'll show you from like May of last year. Oh, it was rough. It was super rough. But you realize they literally desire milk. It's their full sustenance, their full need, absolute need, 100% dependency upon milk all the time to be provided to them. That level of like literally willing to cry until you get it is what he's saying. Like that's supposed to be the baseline deposition of us. We're supposed to have this like absolute need for the unadulterated, unpolluted word on a regular basis, like on an ongoing basis. My children need it all throughout the night. Kid you not, man. Sometimes like 21 ounces a night of milk. Just watch it just disappear into my son. And he's just gigantic, massive child because he loves to eat. He's like his father. Now he's eating meat scraps that I dribble along the floor for him, and he's just devouring them. I'm like, here's some chicken liver. Have fun with that, buddy. Here's some guacamole, avocado, egg yolks, all kinds of stuff like that. Anyways, he loves it. He loves to eat. He's got teeth coming out of his face everywhere. He's like immediately ready to eat. He's very hungry for the meat too. You're supposed to get hungry for the meat. Don't just live on the milk. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to stay on the milk. You need to get off of that thing. But I digress. This desire for us to have this absolute knowing of the word is so critical. And we spent some time recently with somebody that was incentivizing their children to read the word. And it was brilliant. They were literally, okay, those of you that are stuck inside the professional schooling system, the doctrines of demons known as mass compulsory education, the death trap to many's minds, the place where they murdered your curiosity and killed your absolute willingness to learn about things. You know, the place where they murdered your soul. Dang schools. I'm not talking about education. I'm talking about schooling. Very different. We went and saw schools of fish at an aquarium because my daughter, one of the things we incentivized for her to learn reading was that if she learned to read, there's this like book that we used that was like 100 easy lessons to get your child to read, something like that. I'll drop a picture in ideally. My wife knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. Anyways, we're like, Naomi, you want to know the word. You want to be able to read the word. You got to read through this book. By the time you read through it, we'll take you to this super epic aquarium that was in Springfield. Bass Pro Shops, #1 rated aquarium in the world. It actually was. We've been to quite a few aquariums. This place smoked them all. It was fantastic. But it took her literally a year and a half of like doing that. Now, that being said, she wasn't super motivated to do the whole reading thing. So she's like, meh. Children really are kind of individualistic on a lot of this stuff, which requires individualized training protocols. They need that in their life. And that's why the schooling system is such death. But when we got into this aquarium, they had a tunnel with fish swimming in a school. That's the only place in creation where we talk about the word school, where they're all swimming in this kind of uniformed, conformed pattern where they're like, they're all doing that together. That's what schooling was really designed to do. It has nothing to do with actually teaching you stuff. It has everything to do with indoctrinating you into an ideological pursuit known as the gouvernement. You know what I'm saying? Like that you hate the creator, you hate the word, fundamentally destroy your morals, biblicity. Even in a lot of the Christian homeschool stuff, there's a bunch of just flat out lies, a bunch of garbage, worthlessness in there, a bunch of filthy nonsense. Anyways, I'm reading another book that's called, hold on. That one, The Underground History of American Education. I talk about this book quite a bit, but I'm like going back through a lot of these resources that I've recommended for years, and I'm just highlighting certain components to it. But this one deals a lot with the fundamentals of how that system came to be. But that like intentional destruction of your child's ability to like recall information. He spends a lot of time examining the early years, like when we were still a colony. You know what I'm saying? Like before the 1776 and all the rest of this stuff and the Illuminati's infiltration of every arena of the new Atlantis that America became, that kind of stuff. And he's just talking about how reading, proficiency of reading writing, arithmetic was foundational. Everybody basically knew how to read. Like fundamentally, most people, they all grew up learning to read. And then one of the places that they did that was in front of the fire. Like gathered in, when you actually have a fire or wood stove and stuff like that, it makes you draw in to the heat. Okay. Where we have forced air heating and stuff like that, you don't need it. So no, there's not this central place in our home where everybody's gathered together to in the evenings, because that's where light was coming from and that's where warmth was coming from. And it was a place that you needed to be near. And that's where foundationally so many families for thousands of years, that's where their children were educated. That's where education took place, was the heart of the home right there. And that was done surrounded by the word. That was literally the foundation place of training for almost every child in the Americas, was the Bible, was literally the scriptures, was this living sword. That's where they learned arithmetic. There's literally a book in here called Numbers, you guys. You can teach your children reading, writing, arithmetic, communications, everything foundationally they're really going to need to know in order to be successful in life. You can teach them from this book. It's like reality. This should be your primary education source. There's people who memorize, handwrite the Torah over and over and over and over again. That's the first 5 books of the Bible. That's the way they teach their children handwriting, like penmanship. You know what I'm saying? Teach them to copy the word. It's unbelievable how much it will rewire your mind, because this is a living book that's planting seeds into them, and those seeds will always be fruitful. Inevitably, it says the word of Elohim never returns void, meaning it never comes back empty. Every time it's sown out into whatever material it's put into, it's going to be fruitful. The level of fruitfulness and fertility in the heart of the soil is where it lands is another factor, and how much the devil comes in and steals it away, or the cares of this world, or the deceitfulness of riches, or the love of lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, all these things that come in and start to devour it away. All those things have bearing on how fruitful it is later on in life. But if you're securing and sowing this into them at early foundational ages, it's so beneficial, because it's building for them this hunger. It's building for them this desire, this neediness to it, this dependency upon it, and you're cultivating that. But it has to start by them seeing you have the similar desire, the similar disciplines, like the discipline of a righteous man, to hunger and thirst for righteousness, to seek the kingdom first. So at the start of your day, challenge, do you start with prayer and the word? Like, do you actually? It requires discipline, myself included. I get woken up so many times during the night that it's made it literally to where I'm in a delirious state on an ongoing basis. And some of you guys are like this. There's moms and dads out there like, oh, I know what you're talking about, man. We met another family of twins. We've met a lot of families. We're like in the twin club now. So when people see our babies and twins, anybody who's had twins is all like, whoa. And they're in that delirium. We saw some people at the aquarium who had 5-month-old twins, and they looked like how we felt. You know what I'm saying? Where they're like, you know, it's getting better. I'm like, oh, it gets a lot worse too. It gets better and worse. I like to be real honest with people about the nightmares that you can have sometimes raising children. It can be fantastic. There's times when it's wonderful. There's times when I just sit there and cry, because I watch Jubilee, like when we pray, she likes to hold her little hands up towards the heavens. And I'm like, you're amazing. I just love that you do that. Just a little thing like that just makes you so joyful. But then there's this like fighting and nagging with each other, and like children are difficult. Anyways, you're a child of God. Didn't you know that? You're difficult too. You're stubborn. You're frustrating. That being said, this family that we hung out with, they were incentivizing their child to read by paying them to read per chapter. Basically like, okay, you want something, you want to put it towards a goal, something you want to purchase. Every chapter you read, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars, right? Pennies, cents, however you want to structure it. But this was something that like children that I went to school with, I saw their parents would pay them for A's. You know what I'm saying? Worthless letters that meant nothing. By the way, all those report cards, you guys, I'm saying it's worthless. Sorry if you're still stuck in school and you have to do it. It's worthless. Get out of school as fast as humanly possible. Get out of there. The sooner you get out, the better you're going to do in life. I'm not joking. Best thing I could ever hear is somebody said that I dropped out of school. Praise Yah, you have hope. Get out of there as quickly as possible. There's some schooling, some education that's beneficial. I understand. Not all of it, almost none of it is any value to your children's life. In fact, it's only going to teach them worthless things. It's designed to destroy them. It's designed to destroy them, to confuse their identity, to ruin their souls. Anyways, get fired up from that. That being said, something that can motivate your children tremendously is to make them have a goal that they could work towards, and to have them read through, like the Psalms, read through the entirety of the Psalms. Have them do that, discipline to do that. One of the things that they were also encouraging them to do was like write a word from every verse as you're going along. Like Just write a note of something that you noticed that popped out to you as you're going along. That's brilliant. That's brilliant, because as you go along, then as you look at your scriptures later on, you're like, you can do a little highlight glance as you type over it. Sometimes, the whole like highlighting effect, you're like, I'm going to underline these verses. I'll hold it up so you guys can see a little better. This is my favorite scriptures, by the way. ISR Scriptures 2009. One of the best. Dang, my baby's waking up. It's like that, man. All that excitement. Thin walls. He's coming. He's desiring the milk and the meat. I'm going to have to feed him again. Anyways, for Yahweh is our shield, and the set-apart one of Yisrael is our sovereign. Dang, Psalm 89 is salty and dangerous, you guys. I challenge you to read it and memorize it. Anyways, underlining does some things to help it stand out later on, but writing with your own hand alongside it, things that you notice and you have insights in that you learned into it, highly beneficial, because you can come back to it later on. You're going to be able to glean your little Cliff Notes version of it. Anyways, there's something that I was gleaning from because I was hitting 2 Corinthians like crazy, 2 Corinthians 4, and I saw this just ridiculous strategy. I'm trying to glean through what are the seeds of righteousness that can be sown out into our lives, into the lives of others that are going to germinate, but also what are the seeds of the enemy? What are the seeds of the dragon that he has sown out into our lives and infecting everybody with? It's all good. She's in there. What are those seeds that he's infecting the people of our world with? You know what I'm saying? So in the Shreth Imperative, one of those things he hits on right here, check this out. Anyways, he's talking about here in page 122. This is his chapter called The Watchers, Their Women, and the Power of to transform the world. It's a great one. But on page 122, he talked about what are the 3 main things that were being used like in modernity, in the late, starting really in the 19th century, 1800s, that like came in to infect our society, to turn it into this image of the beast that we're all like turning around, looking around like, what the heck is going on out there? And why is everything falling apart in such a horrible and evil way? Why is everything being turned into like the worst possible version of it? It's because a lot of this foundation work's been going on generationally. People have been literally living their entire life not to see the end goal. Like we have Hebrews 11 as this like chapter of faith where they're like, and living through all these things, they saw not the promise. You know what I'm talking about here? Maybe you haven't. Hebrews 11, foundational. Check this out. There you go. We'll just jump in here. By belief, he left Mitzrayim, Moshe, not fearing the wrath of the sovereign, for he was steadfast as seeing him who is invisible. By belief, he performed the Pesach and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By belief, they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land. And when the Mitzrites tried it, they were drowned. By belief, the walls of Jericho fell, having been surrounded for 7 days. By belief, Rahab the whore did not perish with those who did not believe, having received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to relate of Gideon and Barak and Shimshon, Yiftah, and also of David and Shemuel and the prophets, who through belief overcame reigns, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became mighty in battle, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back their dead by resurrection, and others were tortured, not accepting release to obtain a better resurrection. And others had trials of mockings and floggings and more, of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were tried. They were sawn in two. They were slain with the sword. They went about in sheepskins, in goatskins, being in need, afflicted and mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in deserts and mountains and caves and holes of the earth, and having obtained witness through the belief, all these did not receive the promise. Elohim having provided what is better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. These were the righteous people who had that word sown into them very early on. This is the fruit of their life being recalled and recounted for. This is the true Hall of Fame. Not the sports Hall of Fame that the idolaters are worshiping at. Murder your sports gods, please. I'm not saying the humans necessarily. I'm saying like the literal idolatry that sets yourself in your heart to go worship the gods of sports. It's circus to distract you from living a bold and courageous life for the kingdom. It's worthlessness. Cast off the things that are literally serve no value. I was so hopeful that during COVID, there was going to be a death to all the sports. And then they put paper mache cutouts of human creatures in the stands to make it look like there's still people out there, fans and such. Come on, guys, get out of this stuff. Anyways, there's a crazy, insane, adventurous, wild, daring, deadly world out there that you could be fighting for, a crazy, insane kingdom of awesomeness that you could be a part of that's just Has nothing to do with that worthless stuff. Anyways, this is like the Hall of Fame. They call it Hall of Faith. It's such an epic chapter. It should be one that you're like well-versed in, well-acquainted with. There is here a foundation of people that literally labored towards something that they never saw come to pass their entire life. And then their seed, their sons, their children, their daughters carried on in that mission. They carried forth the fruits of that mission continually for generations. And because of that, we also get to participate in that. There is also an inverse version of this that takes place in the kingdom of darkness, who instruct their children diligently from the days of their youth, foundationally. They impart to them these doctrines of demons, these charged writings. They make them well-versed in the word. I'm talking about the Bible just as much as I'm talking about other Bibles, doctrines of demons, other occult writings and esoteric circles, things that are being brought in to indoctrinate them in. However, they are well-trained in that at an early age so that they can carry on this agenda of these adversaries to our kingdom, okay? They are fighting day and night to advance this kingdom because they literally have immortals they report to. They literally have these other deities that they're accountable to. And because of that, they have been advancing through three predominant tools this agenda. Dr. Michael Lake addresses this a lot in the Shinar Directive. I highly recommend it if you've not read through it. If there's any one recommended reading references, you guys, that you could dive into, check out the Sharith Imperative. The Shinar Directive is the first one, and then this one, okay? Anyways, he talks about these three agents, eugenics, evolution, those were the two big ones, and then spiritism. He said, yes, I was remiss in my scurry to complete my former work to include the third piece of puzzle, spiritism, also called spiritualism. As major portions of Western society were rejecting historic Christianity in the 19th century, they raced toward the other end of the spiritual spectrum in Eastern mysticism. The 19th century pastor and theologian George H. Pember warned the church of the dangers of spiritism in Earth's earliest ages. And lastly, there was yet a third class of men devoted to the higher and more intellectual forms of pagan worship, initiates of the mysteries, those secret societies, which had then woven their nets over the whole of the civilized world. These crept into the fold unawares, as true wolves in sheep's clothing, with deliberate intent to worry and destroy the flock. For from the first, with an instinct of Satan, they marked the Christian as their mortal foe, and perceiving with ever-increasing alarm the failure of persecution after persecution from Nero to Gallienus to suppress this new sect, felt that it could not be exterminated by open warfare and must therefore be seduced and corrupted by craft. This is like the doctrine of the Jesuits, the Counter-Reformationists. This is the foundational way that they work. This is the subterfuge of the serpent through and through. This plan was far more successful than the violence of persecution, where the sword of the world failed its flatteries, were victorious. The astonished church beheld the frown of her cruel oppressor softening into a friendly smile, was bewildered with offers of peace and union from those who had hitherto breathed out threatenings and slaughter, and become elated with the sudden change, and was not indisposed for compromise. And thus the world became nominally Christian, and vast crowds of idolaters passed within the pale of the visible church, bringing with them their old gods and goddesses under new names, as well as their incessant sacrifices, their rites, their vestments, their incense, and all their paraphernalia of their impious worship. Nor did the philosophers fail to contribute their share to the perplexing confusion which speedily obscured every vital doctrine of Christianity. For by skillfully blending their own systems with the truths of Scripture, they so bewildered the minds of the multitude that but few retained the power of distinguishing the revelation of God from the craftily interwoven teachings of men. Come on, y'all. People used to write so well. People were smarter before us. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just be real honest with yourself. People were way smarter back then. This is what happened when people used to be well acquainted with reality. They used to have a firm grasp of how the kingdom of darkness was operating and how they were infecting themselves. Basically, the tactic of the enemy became, whenever we physically attack these people, okay, when we physically persecute them, like go back to the very beginning, When we physically try to stomp them out and kill them, what happens? Okay, all the way, go back to Genesis 3. They're like, let's start with the seed war. Cain literally kills the carrier of the seeds of righteousness. Cain's like, I'm going to kill Abel. That's the seed of the serpent, doctrines of demons, right away. They start another genetic. They start another child, Seth. Okay, there's a physical war going on from that day forward with the seed of the serpent, the people that get possessed by this ideologies of pursuing the doctrines of demons, the ways of darkness. They embrace that. They embrace the iniquity force. When they take that upon themselves, they become completely possessed with a malice. Malice is inventing ways of causing harm to your enemies. They become possessed with this need to pursue an adversarial approach to people of righteousness. It's because you're swallowing the seed of the serpent. That's the fruit that's always going to come out, is war with the seed of the righteous. That seed war has been going on. And early on, they systemically tried to blot out the physical bloodline, the seed line of the Messiah, the prophesied seed that would come to stomp the head of the dragon, to stomp out the head of the serpent. Okay, they have been making that war physically. In Genesis, the way that the strategy that they did that was with the Watchers coming down. Watchers are a class of immortals that rebelled, came down on Mount Hermon, intermingled their seed line, their genetics into women to corrupt the genetics of the earth. Okay, they literally filled the earth with an altered image, with these images of the beast, with this literal perversion of what the Creator intended us to be. Animals, plants, everything got corrupted. Okay. This is why Noah was preserved. He was literally pure in his genetics still. Okay. That war failed. Okay. After the flood, the enemy had a different strategy, okay, which was the restoration of the mystery religions. Okay. These writings of the Watchers that had been inscribed on stone, the things that people still to this day, many secret societies, many government agencies, there's a foundational need to go and discover what these Watchers, what these previous ancient civilizations wrote, because they're trying to use that to rediscover ancient technology. Before the flood, it was far more advanced civilization than anything you see today, beyond your wildest imagination, most impossible for us to get our head around. Giants and hybrids walking around, interconnected communication systems, power and energy systems, completely different than anything you and I would consider of this day of modernity. They're trying to rediscover that stuff and utilize it again. That's why, like, things like even the Reynolds family, they developed this submarine called the Illuminaut so they could go down into the depths of the oceans. It used to not all be oceans around everywhere, you guys. Before the flood, it wasn't always oceans. Okay, major 4 rivers watered the earth. Mist came up from the ground and watered the whole earth. It was not rain and floods and all this stuff. So that area, that landmass, used to be where people lived, where these creatures lived, where they had civilizations. There's still ruins down there where this technology and stuff has been buried under mud and silt. There's a reason that there's a lot of money put in by certain families to go down to those areas and be able to gather up metamaterials, materials that science has not discovered or utilized yet, technology, writings, prophetic writings, priestly stuff. Anyways, those are some of the tools that they use to do that. This is why science that gets funding is stuff that's looking to talk to the stars and the celestial beings above our heads, and stuff that's going down to the depths of the earth to be able to collect this stuff. That's why we have a lot of these research programs. That's really what they're there for. So I did a great show recently with a guy named Billy from Permapastures Farm, and we talked a lot about Mount Graham in Arizona. Oh, I got to put out that interview. It's super good. Anyways, we talked about the Lucifer device that the Vatican Church uses, the Vatican as a whole, and the Jesuits. They love looking up at the stars and communicating with those deities up there. But underneath it, they also have particle accelerators to open portals down into the underrealm. It's a crazy, insane world. It's more wild than you can even imagine. That's why you don't need video games and crazy sports stuff. It's just crazy, more cool out here on this side of reality. Real reality is crazy, fantastic. Anyways, the Kingdom of Darkness strategy after the flood was to gather up that knowledge again, like with Nimrod. That's literally what he did. He gathered up that knowledge and altered himself to become like one of the gods. He wanted to be like the immortals. And he raised up all of society, like all of the world, under one religion, one mind, one tongue. Like they were trying to literally go and do the very thing Halal ben Shahar declared he was going to do, was rise and ascend into the Most High, to literally put himself above the stars. They literally were building a tower to the heavens to try to reach in and make war with Elohim. During that time, the languages were scattered, okay? That knowledge base, all of the religious worship and all of the power of the tools that they had by gathering that information was scattered. 72 different principalities and rulers over the nations. The nations were divided, okay? One nation was chosen out of all of them, Abram, literally the same time frame, you guys. One nation was chosen, 70, the others were all given principalities and powers to rule over them, whereas Yahuwah chose one nation to be his inheritance. Okay, that started with Abram, and then it came all the way down to Isaac and Jacob and Israel, ultimately. That literally is where these wars have gone from then on, because we are living literally amongst the influence of these other mighty ones, these other gods that rule over these other principalities, like the prince of Persia that Daniel sitting there praying and asking Yahuwah to answer him. And he's like, why haven't you answered me? It's been 21 days. And he's like, sends a different immortal to send him a message like, listen, I came to answer you right away, but I got held up in this battle in the heavenlies with the prince of Persia, the principality over the kingdom of Persia. He held him back until Michael, who was the prince over Israel, came and held him back, fought him back so I could get free to be able to come down here. That's how literal wars take place in the heavenlies, guys. When you pray, like actual wars take place. Sometimes those wars cause us to have a lot of doubt because we're not seeing fruitfulness of our prayers. But what we don't understand is there's powers behind this realm that we don't see fighting against us day and night. They don't sleep, they don't hunger, they don't thirst. They wage war against the kingdom of righteousness. But understand, there's many more of the sons of righteousness, and there's many more immortals who are obedient to Yahuwah's ways that have not rebelled. So because of that, the mystery religions are people that have gone out and tried to collect those pieces of information, the esoteric secret writings. They're trying to regather that stuff and build it up again. That's the main strategies of the enemy to this day, is infecting the world with those pagan ideologies, those occult influences, to get them to draw them ultimately back under the son of perdition, this lawless one who will lead the whole world astray. It's like the dragon is literally going out to lead the entire world astray. He's going to give all his power to one being to try to raise him up, to exalt him. It's going to be a wild time. But during this time, like what we're in now, we're experiencing the fruit of that war. And now they realize, listen, we can't persecute these people physically. Every time we attack them, they multiply. So let's, instead of fighting them, join them. Let's infect them with all of these idolatries. This is what happened with Constantine, and the embracing of the Romans instead took on Christianity, a paganistic form of it, through the Universal Catholic Church, the great whore, that adopted paganism and mixed it with the gospel of the kingdom. And they started creating this conjuring of esoteric occultism inside the body of Messiah, desecrating the body throughout it. And they made that the mainstream form of religion for so many people. People still associate Christianity with Catholicism, and they could not be more further from each other. They're diametrically opposed foundationally, but many people have meddled between those two. That being said, that strategy of subterfuge, of sowing this other seed into our biblical doctrines, is what has destroyed so much of that. Dr. Michael Lake does a great job at breaking that down, especially from the seminary side of it. He's much more classically trained in seminaries, and he saw where things like textual criticism, hermeneutics, and these other things that they're literally basically trying to destroy how people look at the scripture, that it's not really a spiritual book, that it's more just like, people kind of just wrote this stuff down. It's more like kind of a historical thing. Remove all the spiritual side of it, okay? To remove the divinely inspired portions of it, to degrade people's faith in it, ultimately. But they were blending their own systems of this truth in with the scripture. And here he has another quote here I wanted to hit on, because he goes into the Vril Society, goes into a lot of the Nazis. He goes into a lot of like where these occult works and the way that they waged their war came in to our culture and came into our society, and why we see things like yoga in the church. Why do we see transcendental meditation being offered in our churches? Where did all this stuff come from, and how did it find its forces? But anyways, he goes into a huge amount of that. And you see, this is like the major strategies of the enemy. And the way that we drive that out is truly through living a set-apart life, is to calling people back to the word and having them, for themselves, learn to know the word. Because if you, like my children right now, learning the word for themselves, if they know it, they can't be taken captive by the enemy or people that come in and sow in doctrines of demons into the word, because they know it and they're established in it. They have a firm foundation to resist it from. 2 Corinthians 4:4. This is the one we're going to hit on here. I'm going to have to go, you guys. I'm sorry. I apologize. My children are struggling out there. They need help. Anyways, therefore, this is 2 Corinthians 4. Therefore, having this service, even as we received compassion, we do not lose heart, but having renounced the secret ways of shame, not walking in craftiness, nor falsifying the word of Elohim, but by the manifestation of the truth, recommending ourselves to every human conscience in the sight of Elohim. And indeed, if our good news has been veiled, it has been veiled in those who are perishing, in whom the mighty one of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelieving, so that the enlightening of the good news of the esteem of Messiah, who is the likeness of Elohim, does not shine on them. For we do not proclaim ourselves, but Yeshua the Messiah, the Master, and ourselves your servants for the sake of Yeshua. For Elohim, who said, let light shine out of darkness, is the one who has shone in our hearts for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Elohim in the face of Yeshua Messiah. And we have this treasure in earthen vessels, so that the excellence of the power might be of Elohim and not of us, being hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, being perplexed, but not in despair, being persecuted, but not forsaken, being thrown down, but not destroyed, always bearing about in the body the dying of the Master Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might be also manifested in our body. For we, the living, are always delivered to death for the sake of Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested in our mortal flesh, so that death indeed is working in us, but the life in you. Man, for those of you that are being hard pressed on every side, persecuted, crushed, perplexed, and in despair, take heart and know that there is a body of believers who are experiencing these same persecutions, who are enduring the greatest shots across the bow. The enemy is waging his war day and night for the souls of mankind. Listen, some of you are taking an absolute onslaught of enemy fire right now. And you know what? Be encouraged, because that means you're over the target. The enemy never wastes a round of ammunition. He never wastes his fiery arrows, his missiles, his javelins. Okay? I'm going to do it right now. The javelin missile system, real quick. I'm going to talk about military tactics. Okay, check this out. The United States Army has adopted something that's called a javelin missile system. Hundreds of $1,000s. Okay, crazy tool. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to geek out on weapons for a second here. Javelins. We read about in Ephesians 6. It says, above all these, when you're taking up your armor, you know what I mean? Because you're in a war, you need your armor on. It says, above all else, taking up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish the fiery missiles of the evil one. We don't think about, like, people used to have like a guy with a bow and arrow with like a fiery dart on it, little like an arrow that's burning. It's actually pretty hard to do. It takes a lot of work to make an arrow stay on fire the entire way to targets. I've watched a lot of videos of guys doing it. It's pretty savage. Check it out anytime. Anyways, you're shooting these arrows out and they're like, you know, like, oh, that arrow's on fire. It's kind of a tracer. It's actually easier to dodge it if it's on fire and you can see it coming. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, don't think like that. Missiles, okay? Think about something that's going like 1,200 miles an hour coming at your face. Laser guided, crazy, deadly stuff. Heat seeking, coming to gun you down. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. That's what the adversary has, okay? One of those missiles the United States Army uses, military uses, it's called a javelin. Salty. Oh, I can look it up for you. Hold on. This will be fun. I can share my screen. Check this out. Javelin. Okay, when you want to fight something that's like an armored target, okay, this is how the adversary sees you. If you don't see yourself like this, it's because you have a false identity. You don't know who you are or what you are, but you are an amazing person. You are made for war. The enemy sees at you as like a gigantic tank that's dominating a battlefield, and everyone's trying to shoot at you with their pea shooting M16s and ARs and their tiny little AK-47s, and maybe they got some more thunderous, 50 caliber stuff, and they're trying to take you out. And it's just like ting, 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 ting. You're just driving along, chugging along. You're just like firing off the word. You're like, whatever, yo. It just sounds like a little hail outside. Don't even mind. Then all of a sudden, the enemy's like, you know what? There's like an actual adversary on the battlefield. We better take that sucker out. Take out that threat to us. Ready? Check this out. This is what it looks like. Yeah, let's do it. Javelin missile systems. Oh, yeah. This is the deadly stuff. You know what I'm saying? So this thing, when you're trying to take out an armored target, this is what they utilize in our military. Because here, what you got here is going on is you got this guy, one dude, Shalomi homie, bad guy. It's like a demon. I'm going to work against you. You got this throne that's like targeting you, and you're like, oh, there's a tank on the battlefield. So let me launch this thing. So what this thing does is it has a few different ways of attacking a target. Instead of just using like a traditional fired method, okay, that just launches like an AT-4. Let me show you an AT-4. Two different weapon systems here. AT-4. Bear with me. Not that truck. Garbage. This thing. I've shot these. They're fantastic. It'll go through like 17 inches of plate armor. Fantastic. Traditionally fired missile. Flat trajectory. Goes straight out. Wherever it pointed at, that's what's going to shoot towards, that direction. Okay? There you go. It's a better direction of what it looks like. Okay? Okay. Versus the javelin system. This thing will attack a tank. Tanks are armored on their sides. super powerfully. Let me end this here. Tanks are armored on their sides and their fronts and their backs prodigiously. They're like an armadillo. They're like, we better armor up because we're going to get shot at. So, but the armor on top, on the turret, is actually the weakest spot of a tank. So if you can attack a tank from the top, that's the goal. So that's what the Javelin missile system does, is it shoots out and goes up. It's got this top attack. And when it comes down, it blows up the turret, right? It exposes their vulnerability. That's what the enemy's launching at you all the time, you guys. He's launching Javelin weapon systems at you. Some of you are experiencing that right now. You're like, I am taking a bombardment like I've never taken in my life. That's because he's found your weakness. He is trying to exploit your weakness, and he's realizing you are a threat, so he's not going to waste his time with tiny little, like an AT-4. It's not a very expensive rocket anti-tank. You need some help? My children are calling in reinforcements. I'll be right there. All right, 2 minutes. I'll be right there. It sounds rough back there. I'll be right there. Naomi's got this face like this. They're calling reinforcements. Anyways, the enemy is not wasting his time with many of you, and he's firing off those Javelin missile systems. So learn how to gird up the loins of your mind. Be sober and be vigilant. Humble yourselves, therefore, before the mighty hand of Elohim. Submit yourself, therefore, to Elohim. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. That's what you got to do, you guys. Put up that shield of faith. And when you don't have enough faith, you know what? Go and borrow from those who had it. When you're down, dig in. Pull the sword out. Put your shields up. Armor up, you guys, because it is a war out there. It's deadly. But you know what? The days may be evil, but you indeed were born for such a time as this. So live courageous and put your shields up. Fire back. Be offensive. When the enemy comes in like a flood, Yahweh raises up that standard, that mighty army against it. So literally, fire back, you guys. Pray for others that might be experiencing the same persecution you are, because it says, everybody, as much as the suffering you think that you're feeling is just yours to bear, it says people all over the world are experiencing something similar. So pray for them. By praying for them, Yahweh might provide you the breakthrough that you need in your life. Anyways, I love you guys so much. I hope you live courageously. I'll talk to you soon.